co-presenting. And if you have seen a little bit about what we're doing, you may notice that we are talking about current events. And some of those current events are applicable for the day. And some of them kind of happen in recent history. But today we're going to be talking about weapons and explosives, something that we're very, very grateful to say that, well, Rebecca and I, at least, Dr. Rivera hasn't shared yet, that we have experience in. So we wanted to make sure that we brought to you the latest that we have. This series is a part of what we're calling the New Normal discussion series. We've talked about everything from demonstrations and picketing. We've talked about safety, personal safety. We've talked about temporary structures. We've had lots of different conversations. And our hope is that if you see this and you're not with us today, that if you see this either on Facebook or if you're able to see it after we recorded it, we want you to know that you can always reach out to us. Our office at ESF is called the Office of Inclusion and Diversity and Equity. And you can reach us by going to www.esf.edu. So www.esf.edu. So with that said, Rebecca, Dr. Rivera, would you care to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Rebecca Hoda-Kears, and I am the Title IX Coordinator and Affirmative Action Officer here at ESF.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Lisette Rivera, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Director of Student Inclusion Initiatives and Special Assistant to the Chief Diversity Officer here in the Office of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. And I also do see that we have a few people already viewing us live on Facebook, so I will be monitoring that in case you have any questions that you would like us to address during the actual live feed. Back to you, Dr. Carter.
Thank you both. So we really run this more like a conversation, and we have done this all along. And I want you to know that we build this PowerPoint for you in real time, pretty much, just so we can be very current with what we're presenting, and also so that you know as things come up. This has served us well in previous weeks as we've been having these discussions, and we hope that this model of doing it this way will serve you well also. So the new normal, weapons and explosives. So we want to begin with the Native Peoples land acknowledgement that we have for our campus community. And you'll find that many individuals, as they begin, they will read a statement like this one. And the reason why we're doing that, not only because we're an environmental school, but because we are operating with inclusion in mind and also diversity and equity. We acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, the fire keepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral lands ESF now stands. I personally want to give a note of acknowledgement. We just came off of celebrating the contributions of Indigenous people. So for me, I just want to say thank you very much, without which we could not do our work. So the first topic that we're going to grapple with is the difference between public and private institutions. You may not have any idea about why this is important, but we wanted to acknowledge this because if you are going to be in this new normal, if you're going to be a part of an institution, especially higher education, it will behoove you to understand the difference between public and private. And as you heard me say, we operate this much like a conversation. So I'm going to just point out some things here, and I'm going to be asking my colleagues to react to those based on what they hear. So public versus private institutions. We do know that a certain thing called, this is legal terminology, time and place and manner. In previous iterations of this conversation, we have already talked about time, place, and manner. But for those who were unable to join us, I just want to recap that very quickly, especially when we talk about weapons and explosives. So the time, the law says, the place in which you do something and the manner in which you do it is going to be very important. And if you have experience in higher education, you will have heard this before. So for instance, here's a situation, especially regarding weapons and explosives. If I have a weapon, the time wherein I am presenting that weapon can dictate whether or not I am subject to sanction by that institution, especially if I'm a part of that institution, or a law enforcement agency outside of that institution, or the place. So for instance, if I present a gun in a classroom, and I am not a law enforcement officer, what does that mean for a private institution? Or what does that mean for a public institution? I can tell you at ESF, as employees and students, We are not to do that because state property, you cannot bring a weapon. Did you know that? So time, place, and manner. Regarding weapons, that's one. But then regarding explosives, this could be, especially since we work at an environmental school, there may be individuals who may be creating explosives. As a matter of fact, we have chemistry, right? People are taught to create explosives under different circumstances. Of course, they're trained to do so. But I just like to hear from Rebecca and Dr. Rivera if you have any comments about that. If you think, what are some situations where you can think of that people would have weapons and explosives whereby, and I get it that you may not be an expert at this, but what are some of those situations that you may think of that on a college campus, on a public college campus, where people will have these types of things? And what are your ideas about what they should do if they want to come on campus? Who should they explain that to before they even arrive?
So Dr. Carter, I'll jump in from a military veteran perspective, but I also do have a question that you might be able to answer as well too. So for any military veterans, any current military serving people as well too, if you have drill, if you're a reservist or a guardsman and you have drill and somehow you're on campus with military issued weapon, that's not something that you should have. So definitely I want to put that out there, that there's that time where I can't think of any specific scenarios, but I know when we have drill weekends, you may have to, I don't know if you have to run back to the campus or something like that, but just keep in mind operational security. So again, your weapon should be checked at your base or in your car, depending on what it is, and not to bring it onto the campus. So let's just say you had drill and had to come to campus, for a couple hours and then return back to drill, or you forgot that you have something on you, make sure you check it back in your car. But first and foremost, if it's military issued, make sure it's checked at your proper base. The question I have, Dr. Carter, as well, is being a public school, and I think we've had this kind of conversation in the past before, where what if someone has a weapon in the background that you can see in their Zoom live? So what would we advise that? Because it is in their own home, their own setting. So I just wanted to see if that's something that you might also address, and I have some thoughts on that as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So you're not, if you are, is different depending on where you are. So if you are in a residence hall, my answer would be different for you as if you are in your home and you're off campus, you're off property. If you're in a residence hall, more than likely, by the way, one of my previous jobs was in North Dakota, and most people hunt. And so what we would do is we would ask individuals to take their guns directly to the universe as they arrived on campus. Oh, by the way, did I mention I also worked in Texas? So what we asked people to do was bring your weapon, whatever that was, even if it wasn't a firearm. We would ask people to bring a weapon directly to UPD to check it. And then once you were done with your business on campus, you could come and retrieve it and then leave. And so if I had never had those experiences in places where people hunt and also have to have, not only for their livelihood, but for their life, right? To have different things because of the nature, they may be a rancher, so on and so forth, but they have to have different things in addition to firearms, traps, right? These things can be dangerous. And as a matter of fact, I can recall a time where someone went into someone's car and because they were helping them with a jump. And they did not say that, it was an animal trap, but it was live. It was a live animal trap. And they kind of got that person's, arm and they were bleeding and everything. And they said, well, and I remember he was saying, man, I was just trying to help you out, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. So that's just, it's a lot of reasons why. But if you're in your personal home, you can project whatever you want to. Now, just like in higher education, when you just saw about speech, because that slide that you saw before, we've used it in other iterations of our conversation, has something to do with speech. You have to know that what people are saying in higher education, especially if you deem it as hate speech or hate paraphernalia, because some people really are offended by firearms, right? That the way that we overcome speech is by more speech. We don't shut people down. And that can include imagery, that can include artifacts that you have in your personal space. But when it comes to a residence, it's going to be a little bit different. Hopefully I answered your question.
I do. Rebecca, were you going to add something? Because I was going to add something after that, but go ahead.
I had a statement that was similar to Dr. Carter's about and that I know that a number of our students hunt, and they are in the wilderness quite a bit, many of them, especially on some of our satellite campuses, our neighboring campuses. And my question is, if our students or employees have guns in their vehicles um, in the parking lots, but they're not bringing them, of course, to class, but they're situated in the vehicles, is there something that these students and employees should be doing to report that it is in the parking lot, but not in the buildings? Or is it acceptable just to have them hanging in their vehicles?
So if I heard you right, you're saying, is it okay for a person to have a weapon in their vehicle on campus?
Mhm.
No. All right, that's it. No, that's it. Nope, you can't. And not only students, but employees as well.
Right.
There's something that we are mandated to take through the state. They give us training. And every year I make fun of it because of the way that they present the information. So let's say they say, you know, Sally goes to work and she, you would think that the questions would change, but just the names change. I think whoever's doing it is just being a tad lazy. But the questions remain the same from year to year. And it'll ask something like, hey, Sally or Jane has mace in their car. Is it okay that they take that mace into work or brag about it, even if they leave it in the car to brag about it at work? Should they be telling people something like that? And the case is, yeah, you can tell people whatever you want to tell them, but you should not have mace in your car because it's considered a weapon. I really wish that Chief Thomas Leroy were here. He is the University Police Department police chief. And I encourage you to please, 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 if you have questions about what we're saying here, go to his website. It's esf.edu/UNIV police. So you can see a lot. We're going to be showing you some of what his website looks like in a little bit. But good question, Rebecca. Very good question. A lot of people don't know that.
And I think I can add at another campus that I worked at, again, hunting culture. The students were also asked to check their weapons at the armory with the police. They actually had an armory. So on that campus specifically, each building would say if weapons were allowed or weren't allowed. And for some students, they were also allowed to have them for certain times in the residence hall, because they actually had a specific kitchen where they can clean any of their catches. This would put that as well. So that could also be bow and arrow, specific types of knives. All those things need to properly be checked with whatever capacity you're working in. But I definitely appreciated that one campus where I worked at, where it was definitely hunting was a part of the culture. And so they had that in the armory. So everyone knew in the armory, this is where you check it. And they knew the specific spaces where they can, and I don't know the correct terminology, but where they can clean their animals that they catch and so forth. So yeah. Oh, Dr. Carter, if you're talking, you're muted.
Oh, so sorry. That's because I was trying not to interrupt you and I forgot to take myself off mute. But I wanted to share that this ESF annual security and fire report can be found at the University Police Department's website. And it is a requirement that we have through the Jean Cleary disclosure of campus safety policy and campus crime statistics act. So that act necessitates that we have to produce this report. And this report is every single year that it is sent to the campus community. It has to be by virtue of the law. And I wanted to share with you some of the information that is in here and just highlight it for you. It talks about authority and responsibilities of police. So when people say, well, what do they have a right to do when I come on campus? Do they have a right to ask me for my weapon? I really do think that you should read this, because the answer is yes, it does. It also talks about some different types of crime and what is considered a crime, because we want folks to understand not only if they deploy weapons, but if they bring them to campus, it might not be necessarily a crime, but it may be, depending upon the type of weapon that you are bringing to campus. If you have any questions, you can see there's numbers here embedded in the annual security report as well. This includes the ESF University Police and the Chief of Police, but also Rebecca Hodekirst, who's on this call with us. And then there's others as well, Vice Provost and Dean of Student Affairs, Human Resources. And then we have a residence hall that is an association with ESF as well, and it's called Centennial Hall. So you can ask these folks questions. If you need to report, as well as what does off-campus activity, which we don't have the purview to speak about here today, but different types of emergency notifications. So again, I would encourage you to take a look at the annual security report. Very much a part of this conversation. And if you haven't already, take a look at the University Police Department's website, where you see more information about weapons and how to handle those.
I can talk about the types of criminal offenses that qualify as clearly reportable crimes, if you would like me to just bullet those items. Criminal homicide, murder and non-negligent manslaughter, manslaughter by negligence, sexual assault, rape, fondling, incest, statutory rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, motor vehicle theft, and arson. So these are the main categories that we are required by the Clery Act to report on, and we have a history of all of these on our website, as do all higher ed institutions. You will see that we don't have that many in our history, so that shows the wonderful community that we do have here at ESF.
We do have a question from Facebook, Dr. Carter. Someone is asking, are mace and pepper spray the same thing?
No, mace and pepper spray are not the same thing. However, they are treated the same way, and they're under the auspices of this conversation as a weapon. If you like to, you are certainly welcome to, and I'll show you my screen. I happen to be, and I look at this website very often. This is a UPD website. And on this site, it will give you some more information about how to communicate with our police, as well as that document that I just shared with you, the ASR can be found here, or even if you just Google ASR or Annual Security Report, ESF, you'll find it. But there's also other different types of information on this site as well. They don't give you a list of weapons that are welcome and not welcome on campus. But what the annual security report will do, it'll tell you that a student or a employee can be subject to discipline because they are bringing a weapon, and or other different types of things that that person may be subjected to if they are a part of our community bringing a weapon into our space. So sorry, I can't answer that with more finality, but that I do know.
So I do have another question, Dr. Carter, that I'm posing based on something I'm also seeing in the comments. Basically, anything can be turned into a weapon, so that's definitely a different crime. But I also was wondering what advice we might have for a person who might choose to walk around with brass knuckles or something like that if they're walking alone at night, because that's also something that is very common for people to do. So that could be seen as a weapon as well too. The brass knuckles or something that you can wear in your keychain. So I don't know if we had any advice on that topic or.
Yes, I do. So the advice on that topic is, I will let you know that within a certain mile radius, SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry Police Department can give you an escort to and fro from where you're going. So if you feel just that unsafe that you have to have brass knuckles, just know that that's what they're there for. Our police will make sure that you get to where you need to be and also pick you up if it's just that bad. But what we also are able to do, we're able to, because of the relationships that the University Police Department has with Syracuse University, Upstate Medical University, and other different agencies like Hutchinson Psychiatric Center and others in our area, we have really good connections to make sure that we keep our respective communities safe, not just ESF. Mm-hmm. And I realize that ESF has 25,000 acres across the state. This also goes for our other properties as well. We have deliberately, and I will tell you, I know this, that Chief Leroy has deliberately built relationships. He actually was the first person to drive. He actually put me in a van with some other people and drove us out to the Ranger School, and we got a tour. And he was talking about point by point, the different security measures that are in place. And I learned quite a bit. So it's not just keeping you safe in Syracuse, it's keeping you safe wherever ESF has a footprint. Speaking of safety, and weapons, and also explosives. I partnered with two people. One is the director of the Office of International Education. The other is the director of Career Services. Partnered with those individuals in order to address safety, including weapons and explosives, right? In that, and we wrote a report to help our campus community know what they should do when they are going abroad, right? And we talked about it from the perspective of equity and inclusion and diversity, but also with an overlay of safety. And you can find that at the ESF website on the OIDE website. Well, I hope, because our website is changing in flux a little bit, but it's esf.edu/IDE, and specifically under the faculty resources tab.
And we have another similar question, Dr. Carter. Who does an ESF student call if leaving the SU campus late at night? So for instance, if they were in a building or working, do they call SU, ESF? Will SU help them? What would we advise that person?
So on both the Syracuse University, and Rebecca, if you wanted to take this conversation about blue lights, you could. You want to take it?
You can go ahead. You probably know a little more.
There is a feature on both campuses. Syracuse University has this, as well as our campus, and it's something called the blue light system. So they look like poles, and the color of these poles are blue. You go up and you press the button, and immediately someone will come on the line to assist you, and that person is more than likely going to be a police officer from Syracuse University or SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry. And they can help you navigate the campus community. They can deploy someone to you. If you stand at that blue light, they know exactly where you are. Did I answer the question?
Yes, and I also would just add that you did, Dr. Carter. I would add that I could not imagine that the SU police department, or I'm not sure how they call themselves there, I cannot imagine that they would turn away an ESF student who is wanting assistance or, walk across the campus. I could not imagine that happening. And if it does, please let us know, but I cannot imagine that would happen.
I doubt it. I doubt if that will happen at all. And I wanted to share with you that if we have reporting structures at our campus as well. So if you are unsure about whether or not something is considered a weapon, you can always ask. But also, if you see something and you're not sure if it's a weapon, we are all here to keep each other safe. And that can be even a visitor or a contractor, or someone that is coming on our campus for a variety of reasons. You can report things. And it's nothing wrong with doing that, because we are interwoven and depend upon one another. What has just happened is Rebecca shared with you a list of Clery crimes. And if you wanted to visualize those, here's how those could look. Not all are necessarily perpetuated with a weapon or an explosive, but some can be, including vandalism of property. Just wanted to make sure you saw those, you visualized those. All right, so I want to transition a little bit to picketing and demonstrations. And the reason why is because there was, just this past summer, there was a rally. I use that word rally because that's exactly what it was. It was a rally. And so people were articulating this rally as if it was a protest and saying they were going to arm themselves in certain ways. And so when contacted, I discouraged that primarily because the rally, well, this particular group of people were going to be deploying from ESF. And so I didn't want them to be deployed from ESF and then there'd be a problem, and then they get to where they are and then sent on behalf of ESF or behaving as an agent of ESF when they get to this rally. So, but what we did instead is our department, I know that I had something to do with it in case other people may be embarrassed by what we sent out or not want to be implicated. I would just blame this on me. But what I did do is I sent out something from Amnesty International. So if this does turn into a protest, how do you help yourself, right? And I learned a lot in doing the research for this, in taking a lemon and a t-shirt. If you squeeze lemon juice on a t-shirt and you cover your face, You can breathe in normally, or as normal as you possibly can, until you get out of air of tear gas. What should you should carry a bottle of water for this purpose. You should carry, take your keys and do this, right? So we've sent that out. And some of the feedback that I got back was, are you not telling people to create weapons? I said, nope, not doing that at all. What I'm doing is I'm helping people to stay safe. These are not weapons, but rather these are things to help them be able to breathe or walk until they get to a safe space. So this is very controversial because someone said that if there were, I know this sounds silly, I'm just going to say it out loud. Someone said if someone was to take a bag of lemons and they were to take, I forgot the name of it's a gun, that a projectile gun, then they could like shoot lemons at police officers. I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but I guess that could happen. But that we didn't tell people to take a projectile gun. We just told them to take a lemon, squeeze it in a t-shirt, like I just told you, right? So we have to be careful as agents of the institution, and I'm speaking to employees particularly now, when we communicate to individuals on how to care for themselves in situations where it could be a little hairy or or in some cases quite dangerous. And there is a history of students and also faculty members protesting. So it is very salient to this conversation about weapons and explosives. So being that I've talked too much, um, Rebecca, Dr. Rivera, do you have anything you care to share about that particular line?
Well, I think it's just something that I like that you shared that, Dr. Carter, because I've seen in social media now how people really can joke around about turning anything into a weapon. So really just making sure that we're clearly articulating. I've seen so many memes and videos mocking, okay, I'm going to take this can of soup and I'm going to make it a weapon. So honestly, it's really also about the language and the intent that you have. And as employees, let's just make sure that we're clear with our community, make sure that you're clear with the intent of what you have on you. And that's just what I would add, because this is very relevant and it's a very hot topic in our current culture.
Wow. What have we come to, right? That people feel like they have to, or they want to have conversations about making like everyday things weapons. I think just in general, my thought is like, I have had this thought for a while now that civility is eroding. And that's one of the things that prompted me to insert this series for our community. I just think it's a sad commentary that folks feel like they have to create a weapon out of everyday things or be prepared to do so. That's something.
And I also wanted to, I was thinking something in a similar vein to Dr. Rivera, in that this is really a polarizing time for lots of people for lots of different reasons. And you know, contributing that is we're in an election year. We're days down from an election. So their emotions are definitely running high. And in those times, people think about things that they hadn't thought of before, in part because of safety is an issue. So people interpret and people go to different mechanisms and tools when they feel that their safety is compromised. And in some cases, depending on how we were raised, a weapon is a self-protection mechanism. And for others, a weapon, when they see a weapon, the response is exactly the opposite. It's incredible fear and feel it as a direct threat. So I think that's an important thing to talk about, is what weapons represent, and they represent very different things for very different people. And it made me think about Dr. Rivera's initial comment of, because she's a veteran, she looks at weapons very differently than I do. And so I think just owning that and helping people understand that not everyone looks as a symbol of whatever weapon it is the same as you, and we have to kind of step outside ourselves sometimes and understand what presenting it or even talking about it could mean for someone. It could be a trigger for someone that has been a victim of violence. And so I just wanted to put that thought out there.
Glad you're getting into it. Okay, so here's something I think, and I'm thinking this as one of the reasons why it was important for me to do this discussion. I grew up in a place that had lots of violence. I grew up poor. I grew up in the inner city. I grew up where many of the males around, high incarceration rates, many of the males around me were becoming incarcerated at alarming rates all throughout my growing up, right? And I was told that if I was going to walk down the street, that I had to have some form of protection. Now, I didn't have money for mace necessarily, but there was these other homemade ways, like Dr. Revere was just saying, that people were talking about, different ways to make weapons out of different things. And I would say that for me, it was a erosion of my community. I didn't trust the community around me. Um, and it was no different when I transitioned into higher education. I still don't. I'm just being honest. I don't trust the community around me because you have so many people from so many walks of life. You do not know what's going to happen. And I'm not trying to scare anybody or say that to alarm anyone, but it's a reality that we live with. I, as a person who has done work on inclusion for a large part of my career, I've had people walk into my office. I'll just tell you where. This is in North Dakota. I had a person walk into my office. I was assistant director of a multicultural student services office. And so this person said, they basically told me, I'll sum it up for you. They don't think that I should do the job that I'm doing and that their tax dollars go to, putting affirmative action and lower standards for putting people in school that don't deserve to be there, all this and all that. Now, did the person come with hate? Oh yeah, most definitely. But the person was very articulate and also very sharp and very so the wit, right? The I thought, wow, that's a waste. That's what I thought to myself. That person was just so sharp and well presenting in their words, but it was hate filled. Now, the person didn't have a weapon that I could see, but it reminded me that there's so many things that can be weaponized, not physically, but how words and policies can be weaponized. So even though that person was standing in front of me had very little power, right? Their words were weaponized. Their ideology was weaponized. So I just want to take it there real quick. First, to think about where I came from, and then where I am now in my positioning in higher education. But also how we don't even think about when we think about weapons and how, and I'll literally use this word in the most purest form, how ideologies and discussion can cause mass destruction. I think that deserves conversation here as well, because it's not just a weapon like a can of soup that was just referenced or something like that that can be weaponized. But I think that ideologies can do more to destroy communities and keep certain people in and keep certain people out and put certain people in than any weapon I could create. So I just wanted to, I don't know. This is just me talking. That's the whole purpose of this, right?
And I have a thought on that as well, too. Kind of the opposite, but because I am a military veteran, because I am from an urban city, I also, as Rebecca mentioned, I just have a different lens when it comes to crime and so forth, a different reaction as well, too. But I will also caution the opposite end. First and foremost, if you're scared about something, yes, report it. But let's also not use reporting as a means when it's not, when you're reporting a false crime, or you disagree with someone, and so you're going to say they have a weapon when in actuality they don't, or I just want to caution that because we see that so much. It's so prevalent right now. So there's that. Yes, if you're in fear, report it, but please, let's not make things worse and do false reports. As we are asking people to keep the mindset of where people might come from, and that they might also be, there's reasons why someone might be a little bit more sensitive to something that's going on. It's also the opposite where, just because I have a can of soup on me, or in other places where I've been, where I have had mace because it was legal and we were actually giving it out at our campus. It doesn't mean that that's going to automatically be a weapon I use against you. So I just want to put that opposite side, that this is also a manner where, since Dr. Carter, you were talking about a little bit about incarceration and so forth, a little bit, but that's also a way where, you know, people can get other people incarcerated just for disagreeing and then false accusations. I just want to put that out there because that's what's on my heart right now.
Thank you. And that's what this is for. Rebecca, were you going to say something? I don't want to cut you off.
Well, I was just thinking that this is a great opportunity to talk about avenues for reporting bias or damaging language. And we're very fortunate, and I've talked about this in other New Normal sessions, to have a bias reporting system online. And you can find it on our website by just searching bias, but essentially we have a bias reporting system that comes to me, and we can either submit it anonymously, anyone in the community, or with your name. And I can guarantee that if you submit it anonymously, there's no way of finding out who it is. And it's really important that we report things so we can, as an institution, can be aware. This is part of making our community safe, is to report. If you don't initially feel that you want to disclose who you are and your information, that is fine. You may choose to come forward and you can reach me if you want to talk about it further. But this is a really wonderful way to let the campus know, let the institution know what is going on. SU also has a very similar system, and we both work together to make sure that ultimately we report what's going on. And I know it can be really challenging at times to do that, but that is our responsibility to ourselves and to each other to bring it forward.
If I can add, oh, go ahead, Dr. Carter. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to share that this is the one for Syracuse University. It's called the Silent Witness Tool.
I was just going to state, I started off this presentation talking about weapons that might be in visual sight in someone's Zoom session, or whether it's on campus or in person. I just want to make sure that's actually because something that has happened. I have been in a Zoom session where people have had weapons displayed in the background, but no, it was fine. So I just want to put that out there. And people may have asked or wondered why that wasn't reported. It's because it was okay. So that did happen. And also, I also just wanted to mention, if you're seeing a crime happen in live time in a Zoom or a virtual setting, call 911. Especially that has happened. Sadly to say, in this modern time, there have been reports of domestic violence happening in the background and or other forms of violence that have ended in death. So if you're seeing it in a virtual setting, report it. If you're seeing something and you're not sure if it's okay, file that bias report. But if you see an actual crime happening, dial 911, please.
So I wanted to make sure that you saw what we had as far as our workplace violence prevention policy. And in this, it mentions weapons all throughout. But if you just were to, and many know I do this, just go Control F and see where it comes up. On this page, it talks about unauthorized possession or inappropriate use of firearms, weapons, or any other dangerous devices on campus. And it talks about certain employees of the college, as a condition of their work assignment, possessing weapons, firearms, dangerous devices on campus, and permitted to carry them. But then as you go on, it also mentions bringing a weapon to the workplace, or brandishing a weapon in the workplace, or making inappropriate references to guns, or having a fascination. It lists that under. The following list is a list of some indicators of workplace violence. So those things can be considered violence. And so I just wanted to make sure you knew that. And if you are a student and you're watching this, or are a community member, I wanted to make sure that you understood that we also have similar references in the Student Code of Conduct. So the ESF Student Code of Conduct will also reference some of those things. So lots of things that we packed into this conversation. And honestly, we were worried that we didn't have a whole lot to talk about, but look at that. Look at that. I told you also it's going to work out. And it usually does, because we recognize that community is thinking along the same lines as we are as well. But then there's also some things that we don't know. So speaking of that, if you have resources that you care to share with us that we can share along with others, please do forward them. You can reach us at inclusiveexcellence@esf.edu. That's inclusiveexcellence@esf.edu. Rebecca and Dr. Rivera, I just want to say thank you for your time. I really do appreciate this. Is this something that we wanted to share before we got off our call today?
I believe we're also in the midst of Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well too. So I want to make note of that. So part of the resources that we can send out are local resources, especially through the Vera House as well too. If you are a victim, a survivor, we can also provide that information. But that's all that I had. Rebecca?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the, the plug, and we will be sending something out to the community, a resource that the Choose Action Network has developed. And also, in addition to following ESF Diversity, where we have lots of wonderful information, please, on Instagram and Facebook. Also, the Choose Action Network at ESF has some great resources, especially this month as it pertains to Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So check all of that out.
All right.
I just want to thank everyone on Facebook for your wonderful questions specifically.
Absolutely. That did kind of grease my wheels. There's some things that, because I got some inspiration from those questions as well. I definitely appreciate it. And one more thing that I wanted to share, it's important that we think about what we're contributing to our community. And so some of the things that we have been talking about all the way from demonstrations and picketing and temporary structures and what we're talking about today, weapons and explosives. We really do appreciate everything that the community has given in service to these conversations. And we'll make sure that we recycle information as we can as we receive it, as we always do. So with that said, come to some of our other programs. Got lots of stuff going on. We'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.